we are at the Norris Theater as we bring you behind the scenes to the new play West Side Story, of course, one of the most beloved plays and movies ever seen. Now, today you're going to meet the director and some of his actors who bring this great story to life right here on stage.
Well, Tony is a former Jet, recently decided to retire, if that's the word you want to use. He now works at Doc's Drugstore, which is a local drugstore in Hell's Kitchen in New York City. And at this point in time in the show lasts over a 48-hour period, and you first meet Tony working at Doc's, and his old friend Riff, who co-founded the Jets with him, comes to him asking him to do him one more last favor to him before he completely ends his life as a Jet, and in the process ends up falling in love and meeting a girl that changes his life.
I feel pity, so pity, the city should give me its fee. For comedy should be organized to honor me.
And then talk about the character of Maria as well. I mean, you're both very young, and in the movie, they're very young as well.
Right, and well, for those that don't know, West Side Story is based off of Romeo and Juliet. So these characters are really They are teenagers. They're just like their lives are just starting, if that makes sense. And Maria is comparatively as like the show progresses, and I think thanks to the writing of Arthur Lawrence, like you see that Maria is more sensible. Maria comes from Puerto Rico, and from her life there to her life here, she's more sensible, she's more logical, she understands how the world works a little more. You know, Tony, for most of the show, is very much 15 feet in the air, he's head over heels, and he's in this whole fantasy land. But Maria, although she does love Tony, is much more grounded and much more, like feet on the ground, and she knows what's going on more than Tony does.
Maria, as a character, she's very naive, and I relate to Maria very well because I'm young, I'm 15, and I've never fallen in love, obviously, but Maria goes through this great journey, and she meets a boy named Tony, and for the first time she becomes a woman, and she finds her path through Tony, falling in love with Tony.
This show also has so much amazing music in it. How long does it take you, and you're rehearsing now, to learn all the songs?
Well, a lot of this music is very familiar. The show's been around for so long, and as you said, it's very iconic, and it's, I had one of those moments where it was like, oh, I didn't know this was from this show. Yeah. And so we actually, all of us in the cast, we learned our vocals in one day. We had the very first day of rehearsal was a vocal rehearsal, and then that was it. We had to do all the rest of the work on our own. And so for me and Julia, we learned our songs, and then days later we were blocking them, and so we learned them right away.
Our choreographer, Kim Morgan Green, she's amazing. She's worked with Bob Fosse himself, which is amazing. And she's absolutely wonderful to work with, as well as her assistant Jessica Stover. And they taught us all the choreography in a very, very short amount of time, in 2 weeks.
You've got an amazing choreographer that you're working with and director, and I know that you've done a lot of shows here, and you work with amazing people, very talented people, and it must bring your talent level up as well.
Well, you're right. This is my 10th show with the Norris Center, and Coy Middlebrook is, and not just here, in general. I've been in theater for, I'm going to be 19 in October. I've done theater for almost 10 years, and he's a masterful storyteller. He really is. And the changes he's made to this piece of work that we have in front of us, just all his choices I've fallen in love with. And Kim, it really, like, I think she takes her cue from Coy. Kim has really, and her assistant Jessica, have worked really hard to take what Jerome Robbins originally created, and they themselves have tried to mold it to fit what Coy's vision is. And the creative team in general is stellar, really stellar.
I mean, growing up, because I was growing up in kind of a rural setting, and I was into theater and dance as a kid, it was, theater really saved my life when I was little, and there was a great early theater program that I was a part of. And then when I moved to New York, I never even thought that I was able to perform on Broadway. I associate directed a few Broadway musicals, and just to become a part of that community and feel like I had a position in place and something to give that community. So it was a dream come true.
What was the very first thing that you did when you worked in New York, the first production?
The first job I did, I had a PA job. I was a production assistant for Musical Theater Works, which is an organization that doesn't exist anymore, but it did exist. It was right across the street from the Public Theater in downtown New York, and it existed solely to workshop and develop new musicals. And I sent them letters and knocked on their door for months before I even came to New York. And then I moved to New York. I had $500 in my checking account. And I didn't know. I knew one person who I'd gone to high school with, also in Northern California, but she wasn't even in the business. She was in magazines. But I knocked on that door, and they gave me a PA position. And then I was very lucky because the Stage Directors Union, because of the work that I had done in Chico, and I had a pretty thick portfolio, and I had a lot of examples of my work in terms of production still, and a lot of good press and from Northern California and the Bay Area. And with that, I was able to get a meeting at the Stage Directors Foundation, and then they placed me to assist certain directors, and that's kind of really how I started making introductions in the community. I remember the first time I was assistant directing the, it's called the George Abbott Awards, which is the event annually that the Stage Directors Union has to raise money for its foundation, and I was assisting the director, and it was at the Copacabana, which is no longer, but it was at the time that we still had the Copacabana in Manhattan, and I was assisting a director named Tony Stevens, and they were honoring Andrew Lloyd Webber that night and Stephen Sondheim in the same night, which was a little awkward, but now that I know what that was, and also honoring, I think, Bernadette Peters, and so it was the first night I was around, and it was a one-day rehearsal, but I was in rehearsal with Carol Burnett and Mary Tyler Moore and Carol Channing and all of them, and it was the first time that I was around all of that, and I was pinching myself that day. And I was wearing, I got a suit, a tuxedo at the Salvation Army in downtown New York. I paid like $30 for it, and I was literally in a Salvation Army Armani, so I was pinching myself, yeah.
And I know you're doing a lot of work here at the Norris. The pool of talent that you have, I'm so impressed with. And you being a director and doing as much as you have, is this surprising to you or not?
It's completely surprising. I remember sitting down with Debbie Martinez a few months ago when I did the first job. This is the second of my 2 shows that I've done here. And the first time I sat down with her, she said to me, I remember her saying, Coy, this program is not to make these kids good actors, but it's to help them become good people. And I said, who told you to tell me that? And I figured, okay, well, I'm in, and I didn't really care what the program or what the level of skill and expertise was for these kids. I just loved that statement, and I wanted to be a part of that. And a couple of years ago, I had already made a commitment to myself to give back, and I was doing some guest teaching around the country, and because theater was so important for me and growing up. And so I said yes without really even seeing the program, and then I came to their production of Beauty and the Beast, and I was floored. It was in this very theater. It was, a very different set, but had the same kind of production value. It had an amazing production value across the board with all departments. And then the kids were honest and speaking eyeball to eyeball and moment to moment and confident. And I was completely impressed with the level of their skill, and then the training, and then the commitment to give them the kind of professional environment that they have to tell a story here.
That's what's interesting to me as well. When I was talking to some of the kids, they love the hard work. They want to be as professional as they can be, and they want to be good people and good actors. So it must be very rewarding for you to see that kind of mature.
It's fantastically rewarding for me to take part, and it's also, there are a lot of teaching moments every day, every rehearsal. There's a teaching moment. I get to be a part of that, and I get to be a part of watching a young person find something, get up against the wall of something, and then find themselves on the other side of that in a really nurturing environment. It's really been a fantastic time working with these kids here.
I know that you have a very short amount of time to do this, like 3 weeks to put the show together. What is it like for you on opening night to watch the very first performance?
It's, I think sometimes the best a director can be is be a good audience member. Sure. And opening night, it's always so exciting. It's such an adrenaline rush for the actors and for the company, and it's often the first time that the company gets to run it from start to finish, because even in a dress rehearsal, something may happen, you might have to stop.